And welcome back to episode 3 of Let That Sink In. My name is Tiffany Smith, and I'm the marketing and communications director here at PM and Associates. And I am joined by my co-host Todd Morgan, who is an outside sales rep in St. Louis for PM and Associates. Hi, Todd.
Nice. Yeah, nice to see you, Tiffany.
Nice to see you too. We are so excited about today's episode. We are going to be joined by Rob Costello, who is a field technical representative for Charlotte Pipe. Rob has a BA from the University of Arizona. He's been involved in the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing industry since 1987. He was a former sales engineer with Maddock Industries. He's been a product specialist with Steiner Electric. He was a senior account manager with Grainger, and he joined Charlotte Pipe in February of 2014 as a field technical representative. He's a member of the Chicago chapter of ASHRAE and a national member of ASPE. Welcome, Rob. We are so glad to have you with us today on Let That Sink In.
An impressive resume, Rob.
I
Glad to
know.
be here to join you guys.
We are so excited to talk about Charlotte Pipe today. Charlotte Pipe is a fifth generation family owned company. Is that correct, Rob?
That's correct.
That's fantastic. Would you tell us a little bit more about Charlotte Pipe?
Sure. Charlotte Pipe is unique. Charlotte Pipe's been around since 1901, so 121 years. Family run. The Dow family is the family that owns the company, and the fifth generation just came in within the last 5 years. So started in Charlotte, North Carolina. They pride themselves in manufacturing cast iron and PVC pipe in the USA. There's 6 plastic plants and 1 cast iron plant. Charlotte sits on the same grounds the Foundry does since 1901. 1926, there was a fire, but they rebuilt on the same site. We're currently in the middle of building a new foundry in Charlotte, about 50 minutes east of downtown Charlotte. And that one's scheduled to be ready in 2023. And it's a state-of-the-art facility, 450,000 square feet.
Wow.
And if people from Charlotte, once you drive to Charlotte, you don't even know that a foundry sits right in downtown Charlotte, about a half a mile from the Panther Stadium. But due to some of the way it's laid out, it's just kind of like added on. Now we have a state-of-the-art facility that can go from start to finish and add equipment. So it's been a long time coming. I wish more companies would manufacture stateside versus going offshore. So it's a big
Absolutely.
plus to see things happen stateside, and very proud to be part of the family that makes pipe and fittings stateside.
Yeah, I got absolutely proud to represent them as well, Rob. I know exactly the feeling you're talking about. I tend to gravitate and love those products that are made here in the United States. Also pretty incredible to have a fifth generation family owned business like that, and then building a new foundry. Is this one of the newest foundries in the United States in years? I mean, I haven't heard of a foundry being built in a long time.
That's correct. There's quite a few foundries, but some dive into different areas. The 3 main domestic manufacturers would be ABNI and Tyler. One is in Oakland, California, and the other one is in Tyler, Texas. So we've always been involved in cast iron, and will continue to do so. You know, the amount of money that they're putting into this plant kind of reveals that, and they're strong about it. They also do some custom castings too. So there's been some automotive industry, some pump manufacturers, some motor manufacturers. Instead of sending their products offshore to do their castings for their end bells or their bases of the pumps, they've sent that business to us. So that's another piece of that business that helps if there's any slow times of building the cast iron pipe and fittings.
That's outstanding. That's really,
Yeah.
really
Right.
cool. That's exciting for Charlotte, and it's exciting for the United States, really.
Right.
Absolutely.
You mentioned obviously cast iron's a big part of Charlotte. That's what we were founded and built on, and then came in the plastics products as well. What plastic products does Charlotte make as far as the product offering, as far as CPVC and things like that? What type of product mix do we offer on the plastic side with Charlotte?
Sure. So that very good question. So on the plastic sides, when you think of plumbing, the 2 main areas that you always consider is drain, waste, and vent. So cast iron would do the drain, waste, and vent, and do storm drain. What's different from the cast iron to the PVC side is cast iron is always a gravity fed system. On the PVC side, you also get involved in some pressure piping. So on the PVC side, to answer your question, it would be drain, waste, and vent, storm drain. Then you also have pressure pipe. You have a Schedule 40 pressure pipe and you have a Schedule 80 pressure pipe. And you also have a CTS product, which is a potable water piping system. So that would be our FlowGuard Gold. And that would handle from a 1/2 inch up to 2 inch. And that would be for your hot water, cold water applications for residential, commercial use. So those areas in replacement of copper would use the CPVC. We also make a lab waste material, which is our ChemDrain product, which is used for laboratory waste. So it would either be in hospital, medical, university, K through 12 school applications, anywhere there would be a lab. They also make a solid wall PVC and a foam core. And the difference would be, I actually got a couple samples here.
Oh, I love
You would
visual
have,
aids.
yeah,
Props.
you have a solid wall which is extruded in one layer. A foam core is extruded in an inner layer and an outer layer, and there's a foam product that's in between. This is used primarily for residential, um, and the reason being is for home it's fine. When you get in a commercial application, there's just a concern of one is a little bit more tensile strength,
Mhm.
stronger than the other. But in all drain, waste, and vent systems, your system is going to get augered or snaked. And when the auger doesn't magically go down the center of that chamber. I
Right.
don't know if you guys have ever had a service technician come to the
Mhm.
house and take a K50. Some of them are electric and some of them are hand driven. Well, they're not real gentle as
And
they
they're
run it through
pretty
the drain. They're
aggressive.
trying to get a clog out of the system. But
Sure.
if you pierce that inner layer, you're exposed to water traveling through a system that always looks for that hole. And so,
Mhm.
for those reasons, I would always just recommend this for um, residential.
Rob, I have a question for you. Are there applications where your PVC and cast iron are blended for projects?
Yes, there is. So um, there is there's a right application for every product, and plastic and cast iron are two prime examples. Um, Unique for us is we've got two dogs in the race. So, there's a right product for the right application. Some of our competition will either promote a cast iron over the PVC or vice versa. And so we don't do that. There's a right product for the right application. There are 7 considerations when it comes down to choosing one product over another. And we call that our value engineering considerations. So we can run through those real quick. The main thing is temperature. So cast iron is manufactured to handle temperatures up to 212 degrees. PVC can only handle temperatures up to 140 degrees. Some of the CPVC materials can handle up to 200 degrees, but that would vary in your applications. In standard drain, waste, and vent, considerations should always be that 140-degree temperature versus 212-degree temperature. So the main things when you're building a facility, whether it be in Indianapolis or St. Louis or Chicago, is what are those pieces of equipment in the building that would discharge at a hotter temperature. So a commercial dishwasher or hospital equipment that has to sterilize, operating equipment or laundry equipment that would discharge, typically between 160 and 180 degrees. PVC could be affected by that. A lot of times I'll have an engineer say, well, how about we just put in a tempering valve? Well, a tempering valve is classified as a mechanical valve, and all mechanical valves can fail. So then you're at a position where that PVC, what'll happen with PVC is you're like, and keep in mind, all these piping systems are typically buried behind the wall. So they're hid behind drywall, and you don't know when something goes awry until maybe you see a spot on the wall or your fluids aren't flowing properly to the sewer line. So what'll happen is the plastic will start to melt and bow. and you'll start to see a clog in the system. And typically the plumbers in the field will use a vision camera to go down the lines to see where the area of concern is in the piping system. So it's very important to watch temperatures in consideration. We do see a lot of buildings, to answer your question direct,
Yeah.
will use a cast iron and transition to PVC where they seem fit. So there is transition fittings that would go from one material to the other. And then the main thing in installation is, proper hanger spacing, proper intumescent fire stopping, and to make sure that the product is installed properly. There's also underground burial of pipe that has to be adhered to. There's a standard ASTM D2321. So basically, the thermoplastics is a little bit more flexible, let's call. So
Okay.
when you take a cast iron material, you could, let's say this is a 2 inch, you could build a trench of 2 inches, lay the pipe in there, and just throw your backfill on. What happens with PVC, you have to have a sand base or a gravel base for it to sit on, and then you have to build up the trench so that you don't have a deflection in the pipe. So that standard is spelled out pretty quick, and a lot of the engineers like to put that in their spec. The hard part is every jurisdiction you go to, there's no inspector there watching the backfill. So the
Okay.
contractor has a 1-year warranty. The engineer of record will have, depending on the jurisdiction, a 7-year, a 10-year, or the life of the building, where if they stamp those drawings, they're always going to call the engineer back and say, what happened to our piping system? We find that a lot of times it's not the product, it's the installation of the product where there's a shortcut that would cause the pipe to fail. So if you have a 5% deflection in thermoplastics, that's classified as a failure. And again,
Okay.
you don't know that until the fluids aren't properly flowing out of the building. And
Right.
again, they have to go back in with the vision camera after they've snaked it to determine where is the bowl in the system, where the failure of the collapsed pipe. So if installed properly, it's going to work. We
Yeah.
always see it where there's a flaw where, and the hard part is sometimes then you'll have a loading dock with concrete that's put over it, or you'll have heavy use of delivery of trucks that'll come in, and so the weight of the live load will press down on that pipe and cause it to start to bow out. So
Okay.
there's areas of concern. So in every application, you just have to be careful and look at where you're at. The other thing is this is a very combustible material. And so it's not rated for a plenum. So a plenum would be those drop ceilings that will have a shared heating and electrical system. And so when you go into a commercial building and you go from vertical to horizontal, and those pipings a lot of times will run in those plenum areas. So this is not a plenum application, whereas cast iron is a plenum application.
Okay.
So you have to be careful there. Some jurisdictions allow you to wrap it. 3M has a wrap to prevent it from to have it an E84 is the standard for plenum rated ceilings. And so basically the other hard part is some jurisdictions don't allow you to do that because it never fails. There'll be another trade that'll come in. Typically, we see electrical trade will come in, and they'll run their Cat 5 and Category 6 cabling through there. And if you pierce the jacket, you're back to square one where it's exposed to, not having a plenum rating. Um, the silent killer for carbon is carbon monoxide with PVC. So when you get involved with E84, you're supposed to have a flame spread less than 25 and a smoke spread less than 50. So PVC on a smoke spread is 975.
Wow.
So it gets really tricky. The MGM hotel in Las Vegas back in the early 80s really got a lot of jurisdictions involved with plenum rating. And since then, it's really about life safety. The
Sure.
silent killer is the carbon monoxide. So in that hotel, there was a fire that started on the lower floors. People were sleeping up on the 24th, 25th floor. Smoke traveled through those ductwork, and
Hmm.
people didn't wake up.
Wow.
So Charlotte gets really concerned with selling one product over the other. It's really more about life safety and to keep tenants in the building safe, and not so much the value of selling product, but making sure the product's applied in the right application.
And obviously, that's something the engineer is taking into major consideration when they're designing a hotel or a hospital or something like that,
Correct.
which is why an engineer would specify a cast iron over a PVC.
Exactly.
And then
Exactly.
often what we do see is the value engineer then comes in, right? That part comes in and
Yes.
we start to take out the cast iron and put in plastic. I would assume that in a lot of cases, like in this, the MGM, well, again, it's a hotel. I guess ultimately the owner's going to have final say on that. But I would think in certain applications, you don't have a choice. Cast iron's going to be the product because the application dictates that.
Correct.
Um, but going back to the blended system, like Tiffany mentioned, you might blend the system because the cast iron stack is quieter. Is that one of the reasons why you would do that? Is cast iron's a quieter pipe?
So yes, that's the other one is the noise. So cast iron has a much lower dBA rating. Foam core has a higher dBA rating, and then PVC is in the middle. So the noise is another issue. I see a couple different ways where you'd blend it. So I see like commercial kitchens, they'll use a trap, change of direction fitting, and maybe run their piping system to the stack um, in cast iron, and then from there transition to PVC. So those hot areas, there's not a calculator that can tell you, okay, you can go 30 feet with cast iron and transition to PVC, and by the time your pitch is in the pipe, it's going to cool down. Um, when you have a gravity fed system, the hard part is measuring that because you don't have a GPM rating that you can measure in the piping system. And if that piping system clogs and then you have a buildup, that hot temperature could stand in the pipe longer. But we see that from a commercial kitchen. Also, if there's a discharge in a boiler, they might use that, whatever that run that is coming from that boiler or the commercial laundry area, they'll
Mm-hmm.
use that. The noise as well. So I travel 10, now 13 states. So I go with Marriott. So in my profile, I make sure that I'm on the top floor. And the reason being is I it's about 50-50 chance that it'll be plastic versus cast iron, but I know I'm safe on the top floor because bathrooms start going at like 4:30 in the morning,
Yep.
and that's the number
Mm-hmm.
one noise that you'll hear, whether it be a shower or the toilet's flushing, is you hear the noise in a PVC pipe, whereas cast iron is known as the quiet pipe. You will not hear that. It's a deafening, robust, harder material to hear any noise through that. But a couple of different areas with that too is the noise and in the storm drain. You look at the Midwest drains. I had a medical facility in Milwaukee area that was very
Mm-hmm.
excited, 10 stories. They had no plenum sealants. They had no hot water discharge. They're very excited. We can do the whole building in PVC. And so the design of the building as they moved up was as they go to see the doctors, there was a waiting area on each of the floors that would fill probably 30 to 35 patients waiting to see the doctors in their medical offices. Well, Midwest rain, typical between April and May, is probably there could be days you could get 3.5 inches of rain.
Mm-hmm.
So now you have storm drain, and in many cases from that roof of the building, the storm drain will run through the middle of the building and discharge out the bottoms of the building versus running down the side of the building, which you would see in a typical residential. So when you have piping systems, and this was an 8-inch and a 10-inch line that ran through the building, 6 years or 6 months after occupying the building, the tenants in the building were complaining about the noise. They thought they
Mm-hmm.
were in a water park. So they actually went back in and changed the piping to a cast iron and then brought it back. So we see different applications to answer your question directly, Tiffany, where you can transition in, and both the PVC and the cast iron have transition fittings. They're different in outside diameters. So you have to use a special fitting to transition from one material to the next, but it can
Got
be
it.
done.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
The other thing that comes into play is hanger spacing. So
Mhm.
with cast iron, you only have to have hanger spacing every 10 feet or every 18 inches from a change of direction or a fitting. In PVC, depending on the operating temperature, um, you would have to have hangers every 4 feet to 6 feet. So if you looked at material, PVC would be the cheaper choice than
Right.
cast iron. But then you have other ancillary products that go along with the installation
Gotcha.
that the contractors a lot of times say, well, I didn't save any money. I had to add all this extra hanger space in. And fire stopping is an intumescent collar that has to sit on each side of the wall, the penetration. And some of those can be 4 times the cost of an annular caulk, which is typical what you use for cast iron, use an annular caulk. So there's
Wow.
different ancillary products that are included in it that gets to the end result. And sometimes they're shortcuts. And Todd and I have walked out to job sites and people say, oh, we've got problems with your pipe and we're looking in chases and we're looking in ceilings and the kind of, what are you guys looking in there for? It's real important to check for installation. In our
Yeah.
department, we handle new products. We handle field technical representatives. There's 5 other coworkers that I work with, but inside we also have claims. So if a contractor or if an owner has a claim against a potential failure in the field, we handle that as well. And Charlotte is always very good about standing behind their product and warranty the product for both labor and materials. So um, we don't bash one product over the next. We encourage
Sure.
people to use both
Right.
and to make sure it's installed properly. But there's considerations with each one when you're making your selection. It's important ultimately to get to your installation properly so that everything goes smooth and you don't have any callbacks. Everyone's busy right now, and
Oh yeah.
a lot of the trades can't find enough plumbers, and the same bodes well with the engineers. They can't find enough engineers. So, um, knock on wood, we have to take it while the taking's good, but
Right.
you don't know how long that'll last. We've all been around where we've seen some recessions, and right now it's important to keep things going and moving properly. The worst thing that engineer would have is he's working on 10 new jobs and he gets a call from a job that released 3 years prior and there's a failure in the field or there's an
Right.
issue in the field.
Speaking to the engineer and the application, Rob, I don't know if we've touched, forgive me if we did touch on this, but thermal expansion as well.
Thermal expansion comes into play. So to your point, Todd, you'll have cast iron. So cast iron handles the hotter temperatures. It's a very robust, durable product that's been around for a long time. To give you an idea, thermal expansion in cast iron, 100 feet of pipe, um, and operating temperature, let's say of 100 degrees, will move 3/4 of an inch in a 100-degree delta T. So basically, it's going to move with the structure of the building. So there's not any expansion and contraction that's needed with it. Um, Similar to copper, so copper will expand and contract. Thermoplastics will move with pretty much a lot. So to give you an idea, in a 100-degree delta T, in a 100-foot length of pipe, thermoplastics will move 3.6 inches.
That's a
So
lot.
that's a
Yeah.
lot. So we have tools on
Yeah.
our website that we work with the engineers where you can plug in either CPVC or PVC and you set your parameters. One of the things that to take in consideration, especially in the Midwest, is you have cold temperatures and you have warm temperatures. And both will come into play when you designate your operating temperatures. So you have to select your worst case scenario and for your hot and your worst case scenario for cold. And once you plug in those parameters, we have a tool on our website under our technical hub, and it's an expansion calculator for both those products. So the end result, what you have a change in direction, you would have an offset, or you have an expansion loop to allow for that expansion and contraction. There's other manufacturers that'll have an inline expansion joint. So one of the things that'll come into play is apartments, um, dormitories, and condos. Well, the engineer or will design is the building, but one of the last thing is expansion and contraction. So the architect is always looking for more floor space. They want more floor space for the bathroom. They want more floor space for the living room, the dining room, the bedrooms. The hard part is when you're designing your system, you take into account all your fixtures and your commodes, right? And so that's how you're determining your size of your piping. So the bigger the pipe, it's harder to hide behind the drywall. So a lot of times when you're allowing for that expansion and contraction, especially in your vertical runs, installing contractor will say, well, Todd, there's no room in the chase for me to do an offset change of direction or expansion loop. There's manufacturers that have an inline expansion joint, similar to what you see with the bellows for a copper system. So Sioux Chief and Spears makes an inline expansion joint, which are expensive. And so are installing the offset change of direction and expansion loop. But it has to be done. Typically what you'll see, if it's not done properly, something's got to give. And typical we'll see between the first and second floor in the branches and the horizontal run that will lead to the vertical runs, you'll have a Y fitting. So that's basically coming from each of the floors, going to the riser, coming down. If it's not installed properly, something's got to give.
Yep.
And we typically see that at that Y fitting between the first and second floor. And again, I've been on job sites and Todd can attest to this. And what are you guys doing looking in that closet? Well, we're looking for the risers and seeing installation. But the thermoplastic, something's got to give. And unless it's supported and has an expansion and contraction device in the system, the PVC is going to give. So that's one of the things that I always review with the engineer and with the contractors. Make sure you allow for expansion and contraction so you don't have that problem 2-3 years down the line, because you never know when it's going to happen.
Yeah, so they're both doing the same thing. Cast iron and plastic for a DWV system are both doing the exact same thing, but boy, the application makes a big difference on which product you should use.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it comes into play for pressure pipe. It comes into play for your domestic water pipe. And those tools on our technical hub really help. And otherwise, the engineer's got to run the cut. We have information in our plastics technical manual that can point to that. But then the engineer has got to sit down. He's got to run all his calculations. The tool we have makes it that much easier for him to plug in the parameters, hit result, and then he'll have the 3 options and the exact positioning of where to put them.
One of the newest products on the market for Charlotte Pipe is the Edge HP. And it is a fitting system that is specifically coated cast iron designed for aggressive DWV applications. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Can you talk to me a little bit more about that?
Sure. So cast iron has been around for a long time, and traditionally it's probably the most used in any commercial application. Most markets, New York, Chicago, any big, large commercial market will use that. Then you have PVC. But to explain it a little closer, cast iron, and this is our sample of our Edge HP, which is new, was just released last year. Cast iron is manufactured to handle a neutral pH level. So when you have low pH levels and high pH levels that could engage in the system, you could have areas of concern or corrosion that would affect the cast iron. So thus the term aggressive DWV. So over the years, a lot of facilities probably have still witnessed the same situation, but they develop PMs for their cast iron, preventive maintenance programs. So hot water would flush through a commercial kitchen and clean things out. Same thing with parking garages. So 98% of your applications could use standard cast iron. This 2 to 1% application, like Todd mentioned, would be for aggressive DWV. So where we've seen it over the years is mixed use development with multiple kitchens and a commercial property that turn over, fast food typically, and you'll have the design of a trap. And a trap will always have a design to have fluids in there. So the fats, oils, and greases from a kitchen, you'll have a carbonation from the soda pop. And then you'll have the greases, and then you'll have cleaning chemicals, which would be on the higher pH level. So they'll sit in the trap and then they'll move their way out. And over the years, we've seen corrosion in cast iron, and people have said, well, what's going on?
Yeah.
And so there's been some other competitors that have come out with the material, and we have come out with our product as well. So currently, Charlotte has it, the domestic manufacturers, AB&I, Tyler have it, and then we have some imports that have it as well. Now, when we looked into this product, we looked at areas of concern is how do you take an epoxy paint and adhere to both the inside and the outside of the pipe to protect it from those corrosion areas.
Right.
And the reason we looked at the outside as well is in the Midwest, there's parking garages. So next time you guys are in a parking garage and you park your car in a multi-level parking garage, you'll look up and you'll see cast iron. And the reason being you'll see cast iron is because it's a non flammable material. And you have all those cars in there. If a fire starts, you don't want to have one more piece of equipment in the building that would be flammable.
Right.
But what'll happen is a lot of the counties are using stronger salt content. So in the winter months, you pull in the garage and you guys might not experience as much as I do, but you'll have a big clump of snow underneath your wheel well, and it'll drop and it'll hit the deck. And at the end of the season, some facilities will pressure wash that to the drain, to the floor drain, and wash it out. Others won't. They'll just rely on the rainwater. So in the off season, you have no fluids going through the cast iron, and the salt is what is going to attack the iron. So we built this product to handle the salt in the parking garages. So in the upper Midwest, that's the big thing for me that I'll see this application for. The other one we'll see is for those commercial kitchen areas. So there's applications that we're seeing. And Todd's holding up our Edge HP product. We do have literature available on this, and Todd and I and many other reps have been doing training for both contractors and owners. And so the hospital, my boss likes to say EDS and meds are using quite a bit because people don't know what they're putting down the drain. And
Sure.
a lot of times we can identify it's the carbonation in a cafeteria or a concession area of a stadium. But the hospitals, the tenants, they're not sure. The other thing that we see happen a lot is cleaning companies will come in and they're subcontracted. They're not employees of the hospital or the university.
Sure.
And they're bringing in chemicals and they're not leaving the MSDS sheets.
Right.
I had a facility engineer in Chicago called me and said, I don't know what the cleaning company was putting through the drains, but I saw in a slopstick smoke was coming out. Well, then you look at the rest of the piping system, the arteries of the building are being infected by those cleaning chemicals. Sure. And if they're not flushed out of the building properly, they're sitting in there, that's what's going to attack the iron. So yeah. It's kind of tricky. You look at other piping materials and stainless steel could be an answer. However, stainless steel gets very expensive. So we're pretty excited about this. The uptick on the pricing is 20 to 30% higher than standard cast iron, but it can be used in a hybrid system.
I was going to say that goes right back to the hybrid system with the cost portion of it being higher. It's a great way to start the system. As you mentioned, a lot of the more aggressive properties will sit in the trap. So it's a great way to go. You could start with the Edge HP in the trap and then hybrid the system with cast iron the rest of the way.
Right. Those commercial kitchens you'll see in a hospital or a high-rise commercial office building, you identify those areas that you're having concern with your piping system and then just transition to cast iron or PVC, whatever material else you're using in the building. But this will still handle those hotter temperatures, and it's protected both inside and out. One of the things that we looked at is protecting the outside as well, is because if there is a facility that's pressure washing the decks of the parking garages, a lot of times we've seen our competition, it sprays on the face of those vertical runs, and then nothing's protected there.
Sure.
So the two domestic manufacturers are only spraying on the inside of the pipe. They're not spraying on the outside. So that
makes sense.
Exposure to the outside. But our competition when you spray on the inside, you're really facing delamination. Mm-hmm. And that's the area of concern because they're all going to get snaked or augured, and that's a problem.
So for any engineers or contractors and wholesalers for that matter that would like more information on the Edge HP from Charlotte, please reach out to the PM and Associates St. Louis office, and we will be happy to get you the information and the training that you need for that product. And of course, Rob, you make yourself very available too to all segments of our industry. So again, something that you, the contractor, wholesaler, engineer, if you would like Rob to come in and further educate you, Rob's always happy to come into the market and spend some time with us and educate you on not only the Edge HP, but any of the Charlotte products that we offer.
That's correct. Yep, that's what I do.
And we appreciate it, Rob.
Well, thank you so much, Rob, for joining us today on Let That Sink In. You have been such a fantastic guest with so much education and knowledge on all of the Charlotte Pipe products. And to further our customers' education, Rob and I will be scheduling several webinars coming up this summer on specific Charlotte Pipe products. So we'll do more of a deep dive into specific products. But in the meantime, if you'd like any more information on Charlotte Pipe, please contact PM and Associates at 317-827-0419, or you can find us online at p-massoc.com. Thank you again, Rob, for everything.
Thank you.
We appreciate it, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks.
Great to see you, Rob.
Take care, Todd. See you,
You as
Tiffany.
well. Thank you.
Bye-bye.